Ever wondered how companies prepare for unexpected risks like cyber attacks, disasters, or major losses? In today's session, we'll explore how organizations make smart decisions to protect their business using risk mitigation strategies, the backbone of every risk management plan. From avoiding high impact risk to transferring, reducing, or even accepting them, you'll learn how real companies apply their strategies in real life scenarios. By the end of this session, you'll have a clear picture of how risk managers recommend the right approach for every business challenge. This video is brought to you by Thinkcloudly, helping professionals grow and transition into the world of IT. So let's get started.
We are going to talk about the fundamentals that revolves around risk first, which is vulnerability, threat, and risk. Okay. Now, anything that has risk, okay, should have these components. It should have asset involved, because obviously, whatever we hold or organizations hold valuable is what we protect, right? So asset should be there. Threat to that asset should be there. Threat is basically harm, potential harm. Okay. If there is no threat to asset, there is no risk, right? And similarly, if there is no vulnerability in our asset, there is no risk. Vulnerability is weakness. Okay. So let's discuss this first of all. Vulnerability, which I said is weakness or flaw, or let's say misconfiguration. Okay. For example, let's say unpatched software. Okay. So let's say if we have an unpatched software in the organization, which means software is our asset, isn't it? So let's consider asset as software. Unpatched software is our vulnerability. Threat is, let's say, SQL injection. Okay. The risk is data breach, let's say, isn't it? So can you see without the asset? Now, imagine removing any four of them. Forget about risk. Okay. Let's forget about this for a moment. Remove any three of this. Okay. Let's say there is no software. If there is no software, there will be no patching, unpatching. Okay. Then there will be no SQL injection as threat, and then no data breach, right? Now imagine there is a software which has vulnerabilities and there is no threat to it. Okay. What happens? No risk, right? So basically, they all are essential for risk. Okay. Like if there is no asset, there will be no risk. If there is no vulnerability, there will be no risk. If there is no threat, there will be no risk. Okay. And definitely there are a lot of vulnerabilities in risk. Okay. Let me tell you the types of vulnerabilities. Vulnerability types. There is technical vulnerabilities, which are obviously we use the Enpa software. Then we have weak encryption, misconfigured firewalls, very common, right? Process vulnerabilities like no backup available, no SOP available, poor vendor risk management, lack of change management, lack of access controls, right? Human vulnerabilities, and the most dangerous one, by the way, is a lack of training, phishing, social engineering attacks, reused passwords, all these things. Physical ones. Physical is no CCTV camera present, paper records left unshredded, unlocked server room, these things, right? Now, I'm going to repeat this. Risk only exists where there's a asset, and there's a vulnerability to the asset, and there is a threat to that asset. Okay. Your system has no vulnerability, even if there's a strong threat, risk is low, isn't it? Similarly, threat in common terms, like when you would ask, like, let's say if somebody asks you what is threat, and even in interviews, okay, the one thing that you should tell them is the potential to cause harm, okay, or you can call it danger, okay. Weakness, this is the danger, and the possible outcome out of the two is the risk. Okay. So we usually categorize threat into three forms, which is natural, human, and technical. Natural threat, like earthquakes, flood, hurricanes, fire, heat, right? Humans, obviously, hackers, social engineers, even employees who wants to steal data deliberately, right? Then you have technical threats, whichever is derived from software or hardware, like malware, ransomware, power outage, hardware failure, network disruption, all these things, right? And then you have risk. Now, if somebody would ask me what is risk, simply, okay? So I would say risk is threat times vulnerability times impact. Okay? Very common, right? In cybersecurity, risk is potential for loss. Okay? It is gonna happen. We are just assuming. Okay? Potential for loss. Everything about risk is assumption. There's one more formula for risk. I want to just simply put it out. Risk is likelihood times impact. However, this is also a formula when it involves threat and vulnerability. Now, if you remove impact from here and remove risk from here and here, don't you think likelihood is threat times vulnerability? Let's say we have in organizations financial records as an asset. Okay. Threat is hacker launching ransomware attacks. Okay. And vulnerability is unpatched server. Don't you think there is a high risk of data breach, which can lead to regulatory fines because that's financial reports and reputational damage? And that's why these two are interconnected. Okay. Now there are a lot of types of risk, obviously, but in cybersecurity or IT, the types of risk which you will majorly come across, okay, is strategic risk, risk which is related to organizational decisions, okay, operational risk for process failures, okay, compliance risk for non-compliance of any rules, regulations, all these things. Financial risk is loss of data,
Yes.
loss of finance, not data. Then there is, let's say, reputational damage, okay, reputational risk, damage to the brand image, and not to mention cybersecurity risk. These are the risks that most of the time you'll come across. Okay. So summing it up, asset is what organizations holds valuable. Vulnerability is the weakness in that asset. Threat is the bad thing that could happen to the asset. And altogether, the possibility and the consequences of it happening, all is this phenomena happening, is risk. Let's talk about the risk universe. We will be talking about risk appetite, risk tolerance, risk capacity, and the interrelation between them. So, starting with risk appetite. Risk appetite is the amount of risk or the type of risk that the organization is willing to. So, in simple terms, I'll say, now, why do we accept risk? Do you know why? It's necessary to achieve your objectives. Okay, and different organizations and industries have different appetites. Okay, let's say we have Google, okay, and we have XYZ company. Both are IT. Whom do you think would have higher appetite? In organizations, okay, like like between the two, XYZ company will be taking more risk. I'll justify that. Imagine it's a company which is not well known in the market. Don't you think it will, to establish itself in the market, it will take higher risk than Google? Because Google already is well established. They don't need to take risk. They whatever product they come up with, whatever goods or services they come up with, people are going to buy that. Okay. Even
Okay.
though they're not really experts on that, still people will purchase it, isn't it? Whatever they make, whatever it is, okay, people
Yes.
won't trust it as much as any other, big company, correct? And that's the reason why the startups have much more appetite. Okay. Do you think financial services industry has more appetite, or do you think let's say retail organizations have more appetite? Do you think IT has more appetite or financial services? Certainly, IT takes more risk than finance. Finance does not want to take risk because they don't want to mess up their rules or regulations or standards that they have to follow. Now, to explain tolerance, this is the deviation from the risk appetite. We are not living in a perfect world, are we? Esther is no god, right? She can plan everything, but what if $5,000 loss still happen? But that is the same year that organization made $20,000 as profit. Now, this is not something that organization would like. They would definitely prefer to lose only $500 or lesser. But even if they have lost $5,000 and made 20,000 as profit, their net profit would be $15,000, and they will be fine with it. They will tolerate this risk. That's the deviation. But the total capacity of the organization to take risk is actually 20,000. You know why? Because that's your profit. So maximum amount of risk that organization can take is your profit or loss, whatever. Okay. But as you can see, risk appetite will be lesser than risk tolerance, and tolerance will be lesser than capacity. Now, this is a very quick concept which we will cover up because this is something which we will cover in detail with every single step and every single, um, you know, what do you call it, tools related to each step. Okay.